people say, "Oh, you must regret you weren't in the Rolling Stones." If I joined it, it wouldn't have been the Rolling Stones.
It would have been a different beast.
It completely would.
Well, this is gold, and what a pleasure to have this man in the studio with us. Paul Jones, welcome.
James, thank you very much.
I heard you mention in the past that there was never any doubt in your mind that you would ever give up music, that this would be a lifetime career.
Yes.
And you've stuck to that.
I have. The thing is, I think people sort of ask the question thinking in terms of one-hit wonders, or at least, people who had what Andy Warhol used to call their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
But I wasn't basing myself on sort of Johnny Ray or anyone like that. I was thinking in terms of jazz musicians and blues musicians, and they go on forever. Mm-hmm. So that was me.
So when was it, do you think, that you first realised that you thought, actually, this is me, this is what I want to do for life?
I think I was in a record shop in Plymouth.
Okay.
Devon.
Of all places.
Yes. And it was called Pete Russell's Hot Record Store.
Okay.
And I looked at the word store and I thought, that place is cool.
Yeah.
So I went to it. And I used to go there and buy blues records. And then one day Pete Russell said to me, "You like blues, what do you think of this?" And he put on a T-Bone Walker record. And I'd never heard electric guitar playing the blues, and with a real strong jazz inflection all the way. And on that very interesting record, they'd put T-Bone with a bunch of Chicago blues musicians, which was really odd because he just worked with West Coast jazz musicians all the time. So there he was with these blues guys, and on a couple of tracks there was a harmonica player called Junior Wells.
Right.
And one track in particular was called Play On Little Girl, and I listened to that and I thought, I'm going to do that. Not just sing, because I've been singing since before Lonnie Donegan.
Well, you were in a choir, right?
Well, I came from a musical family, and my brother and I were forced to sing. We didn't have any choice. My father played the violin. My mother played the piano, much better than he played the violin. But anyway, so they were good, and they made my brother and me sing. But I'd been singing for a long time, but hearing that harmonica by Junior Wells, I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And so I put that with the singing, and that's what I've done.
Oh, how long did it take you after hearing that, to pick up the harmonica then?
It took me a while, actually. I couldn't get... I bought the harmonica. I knew I got the right one, but I couldn't make it sound like Junior Wells. And I would listen to Little Walter and Sonny Boy Williamson and all those great blues harmonica players, and I couldn't sound like anyone. The only person I sort of vaguely got near was Jimmy Reed.
Right.
And that's because Jimmy Reed played in what today is called first position. In other words, you play a C harp in C. And it was Brian Jones who said to me, "You're doing that all wrong." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're trying to play the blues on a C harp in the key of C. If you want to play the blues on a C harp, choose the key of G. Or if you want to play the blues in C, get an F harp." It was like Brian opened the gate to a magic garden. Cross harp, as we called it in those days.
Right.
And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but I was on the right road to...
But it set you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And like many other youngsters at the time, you started a skiffle band.
Yeah. I was at school in Portsmouth, and Lonnie Donegan came and played at the King's Theatre, Southsea.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great. So I thought that was what I wanted to do. But I was 14 years old. And I persuaded my parents to buy me a very, very cheap, not that I wanted them to buy a cheap one, you understand, but anyway, an acoustic guitar. And I learned those three chords. As somebody once said, E, A, and, oh goodness, what's that other one? Anyway, so I learned those and learned how to do, takes a worried man to sing a worried song. But skiffle was a very limited thing in my life. As soon as I got
Well, it wasn't long until
you
you formed your first proper band.
Well, I was an undergraduate. I was at university, and I just thought this is what I'm. I got into university because you had to. You know, that was what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
Not because I had a dream of of that. My dream was already making music. So while at university, I'm afraid I wasted the
well, your head
bursary.
Was elsewhere, wasn't it?
I wasted the scholarship and formed a band called Thunder Odin's Big Secret, and played a big secret it was. But anyway, I would play little local dues and play mostly rhythm and blues. I had sort of trad musicians on bass and drums, modern musicians on guitar and saxophone, and me in the middle trying to get them all to play the blues.
Fantastic.
It was good.
Fantastic. So how long did it take you to get recognised? I mean, to come to, because I know you love being in the clubs in London, and then the story about Brian Jones asking you to be in the Stones.
Yes, he asked me to be in a band he was forming.
Yeah.
It wasn't called the Rolling Stones.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't at the time.
And it certainly wasn't yet the Rolling Stones. I'd just done an audition for one of those Palais bands, as we used to call them. It was a dance band, and I passed the audition, and they had work waiting. There was money in it, and Brian said, "I'm forming a band. Do you want to be my singer?" And I thought, He said, "I'm going to be rich and famous." And I thought, yeah, of course you are. and I had this gig already, and I thought, no, I'm getting money and you haven't got any. So that was one reason for turning him down. But I just thought he was wildly optimistic. But I also thought, I'm off and running with my... Because I was, at the same time as working with that dance band, I was sitting in with Alexis Corner, Cyril Davis, and anybody else who would point at me and beckon. So I was kind of thinking, I'll do this, but I'll do kind of popular music and stuff for a living, and then I can do the blues as a hobby. And Brian will wind up doing the blues as a hobby as well, because nobody makes a living from the blues. Alexis Corner was the biggest thing in Britain as far as blues is concerned. Every member of his band was in several other bands as well, and some had day jobs.
Right.
So I said, there's no money in that. So I said no. And people say, oh, you must regret you weren't in the Rolling Stones. If I joined it, it wouldn't have been the Rolling Stones.
It would have been a different beast.
It completely would.
Any truth in the rumours that it was you that encouraged Mick Jagger to start writing his own songs?
Oh, absolutely. But Andrew Loog Oldham gets all the credit because he allegedly locked Mick and Keith in a room and said, you can't come out until you've written some songs, which is great. I mean, it's perfectly possible that he did exactly that. But we used to play at the Marquee every week. I think it was a Monday, it may have been a Tuesday, I don't know. But the Stones were using the Marquee as a rehearsal room. They were just using the stage to because they were about to go on television or something like that. We said, okay, fine. Well, just finish in time for us to have a sound check before the club opens. And so they were doing that. And they were doing all these Jimmy Reed and Bo Diddley and all that kind of stuff. And I said to Mick, are you writing songs yet? And he said, no, I can't write songs. Just do other people's stuff. And I said, Mick, you will. You may as well start now. So I did encourage him. And
but there was no reluctance to join Manfred Mann then?
Okay, I used to get up with Alexis Corner as often as I possibly could. And Alexis had a residency at the Marquee Club before we did. And Manfred Mann and Mike Hugg had a sort of jazz quartet. Same lineup as the modern jazz quartet: piano, vibraphone, bass, drums. They were playing in various places, but they weren't getting anywhere really in terms of finance. And so they decided that because rhythm and blues seemed to be taking off, and it was, they would form a rhythm and blues band. They knew lots of musicians. They didn't know any singers. They went to the Marquee Club and they said, do you know of any singers that we could Yeah, and they said, well, there's this guy called Jones. He gets up with Alexis Corner from time to time. You should try him. So they asked me if I would audition, or somebody actually asked me on their behalf if I would audition for them. And I thought, okay, why not? So I went to the Roaring Twenties Club in Carnaby Street, Soho, which was a ska and blue beat venue. Really. So they rented it for the afternoon to do auditions. As far as I know, as far as I could make out at the time, there was nobody else auditioning. So guess what? I got the job.
That was it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you were part of this band that went to great places, and I guess the first place with the first hit was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Which was, well, an easy one for people to remember, for starters.
Well, yes, as it was the signature tune for Ready, Steady, Go.
Signature tune to Ready, Steady, Go, which meant it was on the TV the whole time as well.
Yeah.
And written by you as well.
Well, me and Manfred and Mike.
Yeah,
yes.
Sure. But do you remember being asked to do that? And was that a big deal for you at the time?
We did that first one got nowhere. The second one also got nowhere. It was called Cock a Hoop. And bless them, Ready, Steady, Go asked us on to play Cock a Hoop, our second single. And we did it. And then they said, would you be interested in writing us a signature tune? And we said, believe we would. And they said, well, we want the rhythm that you use on Cock a Hoop. Guess what that was? Bo Diddley. Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum, that one. So they said, we want that rhythm. We want plenty of instrumental. In fact, the vocal mustn't start until at least 30 seconds in, although it must have a countdown. It's got a countdown into the start of the weekend. And so you can have the countdown vocally more than once if you wish, but it must be instrumental other than that for the first at least 30 seconds. That was so that they could show all the opening credits of the program.
Okay.
And there wouldn't be the distraction of a vocal going on.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, anything else you'd like? I mean, by this time, they've nearly written the song, you know. So they said, that just go away and see what you can do with that. Well, we got out of there and actually, you know, that was on. We were there from sort of like 6 until 7 and then get your instruments and put them in the van and go to the gig.
Yeah.
By the time we'd driven from there to the gig, we had the song written.
Really?
Yeah.
It was that quick?
Well, I didn't really write any words. I just stole some from Alfred Lord Tennyson.
And you had the rhythm already?
Yeah, yeah.
So it was ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic. And what a launch pad, really. And then a little bit of Shakespeare in Hubble Bubble, which, you know, a sign of things to come, maybe.
Well, yeah, I wasn't superstitious. You know, actors don't like to quote the Scottish play, as they call it. You won't even call it Macbeth.
No.
So, but anyway, having stolen from Tennyson and Greek mythology in getting it all round the wrong way, by the way. Anyway, having done those, I thought Shakespeare was next for my theft.
So that exactly. And then who was it? Because Do Or Diddy was somebody else's song.
The record company said, right, well, that's it. You guys are not writing your singles anymore. And we thought, well, you know, we may not have done brilliantly with that one, but it was top 20, you know, just outside the top 10.
That's quite brutal.
And the first one was top 5, so why is it? But they were adamant about it. In fact, actually, this was EMI Records, and they tried that with the Beatles. They actually tried to persuade the Beatles not to write their own songs. However, my only regret is that I didn't have the same... there is an expression that I can't use, which means...
I know. I think I know the one.
The guts to stand up to them. If I had it might have been a different matter.
Yeah.
But somebody once said, what advice would you give to your young self or someone of your then age now? I said, don't be persuaded by a record company that you can't write your own material.
Yeah.
Because it's just something they've got in their bonnet, and it may not be true. So anyway, we basically had to find songs by really good songwriters, and the first one that came up was the work of Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich, Do Why Did He, and that was in my record collection. I used to listen to the radio avidly, and that I probably heard that one on Luxembourg and played it to the rest of the band. We liked it. Then we played it to John Burgess, our producer at EMI. He liked it, and out it came.
And again, instantly memorable, you know. And even it must be a favourite when you get up on stage and play it now.
It's the favourite, really.
Yeah.
Even though it didn't all over the world go as high as some of the other things, like Mighty Quinn. But hey, we'll be doing, I can't remember how many dates it is now, but the tour starts on the 15th of September.
It's a grueling schedule. We'll look at that in a minute, because there's a fair few. You say it's not grueling,
I will
but you're
not
used
be
to it.
ruled.
So how did the success change you? I mean, becoming hugely successful here and in the States. You were young. How did you cope with that?
Oh, I don't like deep questions, James.
Okay. But it changed your life. It did change your life.
I didn't deal with it terribly well, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't go heavily into drugs or alcohol, but I had other addictions that were not very good for you. And so, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to be that young and that famous.
Sure.
But I survived. But,
well, absolutely. You're still doing it, which is fantastic. And you were with Manfred Mann for, it was 3.5 years, wasn't it? I mean, I think people look back and they think it was longer than that.
Yes.
But actually 3.5 years.
I thought it was much longer than that at the time.
Well, everything seems longer when you're younger, though. That's true. That is true. So why you ended up leaving? Why did you decide to leave? What was that one breaking point for you?
But people used to ask why then, and I would say, well, you never asked me why I joined. It was the next thing to do.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
Okay.
You know? I mean, I didn't join a band of hit makers. I joined and we worked together and we worked hard and we became hit makers. But so when it came to time to leave, it was time to leave.
I mean, I heard a great story about the sax player turning up once to a gig and quitting on the spot because they forgot their reeds. And nobody noticed.
Some people say that was apocryphal, i.e. not true.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that it was told to me by the saxophone player himself.
Yeah.
In any case, the point he was making was a good one, which was we turn up at the gig and the screaming starts. We go onto the stage and the screaming starts, and then we play a lot of music all through the screaming, and then we come off the stage and the screaming stops. And it was at that point that he said, I'm leaving the band. And we said, why, man? We've just gone down a storm. And he said, well, you don't know this, but I didn't play anything.
He mimed the
whole time. And he said, that's not what I came into music for.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, that was really true for all of us. That wasn't what we came into music for.
Sure.
But so there were sort of various reasons why I wanted to leave, but it was the right moment.
When you went solo, how was that being on your own, being without a band? Was that quite a shock?
Yeah, I had to sort of hire musicians. It was easier to hire existing bands, actually, from a sort of slightly lower level, obviously. And I did that, and that kind of worked okay for a while. But as I say, I wasn't in control of my own career to the extent that I I wanted. Nonetheless, some of it was really, really good, exciting.
A lot of it was, I mean, the movie world, for starters, and then obviously getting back into the West End, but, in plays and musicals, it was just fantastic.
Yes, well, I'd actually, in 1968, I did a tour of Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, I think, was on it, and one or two other places, with The Who and the Small Faces. And I think it was Roger Daltrey who said to me a couple of years later, "You and I think, were the only two sane people on that tour." And I said, "Yeah, it was a bit like that. It felt a bit like that." I think Kenny Jones was quite sane. But anyway, we came back from that, and I thought, there must be something that, a grown man can do for a living which isn't quite so crazy. And my phone rang, and it was a man called Charles Marowitz asking if I wanted to be in a play. I thought, I've only once been in a play, and that was The School Macbeth. And I managed to get myself the part of Duncan, who dies in the first act. So I didn't really want to be an actor. Anyway, I did those things, and all of a sudden, that's what I was doing.
So who's in the band now? Who's heading out on tour with you?
Tom McGuinness, who was in the band for Do Our Diddy and all that.
Yeah.
And me. And then we have other people who have subsequently joined us. We have a guy called Marcus Cliff on bass, whose previous goes back to everything from the Spice Girls to Sting. I said, "Sting's a bass player himself. Why does he want you on his records?" He said, "Oh, he was doing something else."
Okay.
Anyway, but I mean, he has played with so many different people. Marcus, he's a wonderful bass player. And we have a saxophone player called Simon Curry, who's very exciting. And we have on keyboards a gentleman called Mike Gorman, who is staggeringly good. And on drums, Pete Riley.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And you're heading out, like I say, all kicks off on the 15th of September in Hunstanton. You're going all over until December. Skegness, Bury, Swansea, Eastbourne, Darlington, Aberdeen, Taunton. Up and down the UK. Up and down the UK.
It doesn't go Aberdeen to Taunton.
It does. No, there are other dates in between. Luckily for you.
There's one or two others in between. Right. Okay. But it's reasonably well rooted. But it goes on to the 10th of December.
Fantastic. Very much looking forward to it. And then there's the album, which you were just telling me, you came up with the idea for this during the pandemic when you were sat there.
Yes. I thought it would be interesting to have interesting for me to have a compilation of all the blues songs that I'd written, or about half of them in this case. But anyway, I'm quite excited with the album. I think it's really nice. It's very varied. Some of it is so varied that some people will say, it's not blues, but it is.
It's been an absolute pleasure to finally catch up with you. Really, thank you so much for coming into Gold. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And can't wait to see you on tour. It's going to be great.